Hello and welcome to Lawyerish, a podcast for the people. Lawyerish is a safe space to learn, grow, inspire, and be inspired. So come along and ride on this fantastic voyage. I'm Bandon J, Wallace, Esquire, and I'll be your captain. Come, let us go be great together. Lawyerish is brought to you by Apex, where aptitude meets excellence, and powered by the Green Law Firm, your one-stop shop for everything real estate in Tennessee and Mississippi. Our voyage vibe is brought to us today by Rowdy Productions. Pardon me, Rowdy Productions. This is called The Foreign Tape. I like this, y'all. This kind of makes me want to freestyle a little bit. I'm not going to trouble you with it today. We've got an exciting show today. We've got the incredible Elizabeth Booker Houston, better known as Booker Squared. And we've also got my frat brother, my friend, the living legend himself, Charlie W. Moore. He's 100 years old, and he's going to impart some wisdom today. Exciting show. Big show for lawyers today. Come along for the ride, friends. Let's not belabor it. Let's get right in to Duly Noted. All right, friends. It's time for Duly Noted. I'm going to keep it really brief today because I think you don't want to hear from me. You want to hear from my awesome guests. But I just want to duly note something. Charlemagne the God is getting on my last nerve. I don't know what it is. I don't know what is happening there. I think I don't know when it started, but I'm just noticing this sort of revamp with the conservative, the black conservative person, Candace Owens, who was on the show, and how they give these softball questions and provide this platform for her to rebrand herself somehow. They don't ask any tough questions. And then just recently he guest hosted one of the late night shows where he basically attacked DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And if you'll, just take a look, it was completely based on a false premise, and I just don't understand what his deal is. I really don't. I'm not going to dwell on it today because, again, I think we spend our time better focused on the black excellence that we have on the show today. But Charlemagne often gives out the Donkey of the Day award, and I'd like to return that to him on today. I don't know if he's ever gotten his own award, but he certainly has deserved it many times over. Anyway, I'm going to let that go for now. Let's get on to the good stuff that's duly noted. We'll be right back with our episode, with our lawyerish segment. We'll be right back. All right, friends, we are back, and it's now time for Lawyerish. I'm super excited to welcome my friend, Miss Elizabeth Booker Houston. She's a lawyer, a social scientist, a professor, a standup comedian, and political content creator. She's from the great state of Tennessee, my hometown of Memphis, but she now calls DC home. She attained her bachelor's degree in psychology in 2013 from Christian Brothers, and then she got her Juris Doctorate and Master of Public Health degree from the University of Memphis. Her professional work centers around public health, privacy law related to health systems, administrative law, food and drug law, and various public health topics. You've probably seen her on Instagram and lots of other places. She's Booker Squared. She's also got a brand new podcast that I'm hoping she's going to tell us about as well. Elizabeth, welcome to the show. Thank you for being a guest of Lawyerish.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
Excellent. So listen, there's so much we want to talk about, including your podcast. In fact, no, actually, that's where I want to start, actually. I want to start with your podcast. It's called A Devil's Advocate. Tell me what.
No, The Devil's Opposing Counsel. So that is
Opposing Counsel.
Yeah.
Now, pardon me. How the hell did you come up with that name? Okay.
Because, I talk about a lot of different, very polarizing topics on my TikTok, on my Instagram, all of that. So I'll talk about things like systemic racism, inequitable systems, unjust justice system, all of that. And that naturally brings out a lot of folks, usually of a certain hue, who like to play devil's advocate and say, well, to play a devil's advocate, the devil doesn't need any advocates. So the whole reason for the title behind my podcast, and that's also the name of my website, it's the devil's opposing counsel.com, is that fine? If you want to play the devil's advocate, I'm going to be the devil's opposing counsel, because I'm not here for it. It's usually something that a title that they use before they're about to say something microaggressive, racist, something like that. That's usually
something
what
ignorant that they could have saved for somebody else, because you don't play. You don't play. You take you are snatching wigs. Like I see it. It is. I think that's why you've amassed such a broad following, because it's a beautiful thing how you engage on the very difficult topics. And these are difficult topics that are hard to talk about at the dinner table. They will tell you to stay away from this stuff, at the bars and things like that. But you're going head on at it. And I think you're schooling people, and you're doing it in a way that is classy and that is elegant, but that is also no nonsense. You just you don't take any names. I mean, where do you get that from? How did you come to this space that you're in?
I don't know. I've always been this way.
Okay.
Like you're in Memphis. You're from Memphis too. If you ask anybody in Memphis who knows me, they're gonna go, "Yeah, she talks like that in real life. Like she does that in real life." I mean, when I had, I would get into arguments with people in law school, and I think that surprises people sometimes, because they see a lot of folks online who will talk a certain way or be keyboard warriors, but people who know me, they're like, "No, she'll say it to your face. Like she will say it to your face," and I have. To many people, and it just, so there wasn't really anything to grow into. It was the opposite. When I first got online, I was masking so much. I tried really hard to not talk with my Southern accent, which my sister said, it's funny watching me try to mask my accent, because she used to call me Little Whitley when I was growing, Whitley from a different world, and that thick Southern accent. So I've always had a thick, very country Southern accent. And if you hear about how my sisters talk, my mom's from Chicago, so not her, but like if you hear how my sisters and my mama talk, and my nieces and nephews were all very Southern. And so I was masking my accent. I was trying to be what I thought would be respectable, right? And then there was just a point, where I said, and I'd already rejecting respectability politics and bucket quite a bit, but I was like, you know what, why do I got to do that on the internet? Why why do I have to code switch online? Like, I guess I was treating it like how we often do when we code switch in the office place, right? Because we need that as a survival mechanism so that we continue to get paid and have a job and all that good stuff. But there was a point where I was like, you know what, I got a job that's secure. My coworkers, my boss, they know what I do. They know I'm a comedian. They know this stuff. Why do I need to mask online? Why can't I just be myself and who I am? And everything became so much easier than that. And the moment I dropped that, it was wild to see, because I was trying to switch from just being on TikTok to see if my content were transferable and I could actually turn this into something more. I went to Instagram and I started with 750 followers, whatever I had, just from people back home. And that was back in, oh gosh, that had to be beginning of 2022 or whatever. And I was growing my platform the end of the middle of 2021. And I've now amassed 222,000 followers over there on Instagram. And I think that speaks to how important authenticity is. Like, the moment I take off that mask and just be my comfortable self and talk the way I want to talk, how I talk naturally and comfortably, how I talk in person, everything else just kind of follows.
I love that, because it is true that your content, it sort of exudes you, right? It's very clear that you are authentic and you're showing up just as who you are. And
But if you watch old videos from 2020, when I started on the internet doing what I thought I was supposed to do, you can see the discomfort and how different, and the vibe and the tone. And I'm still giving educational information, all that. And I would still have videos where I would clap back and stuff every now and then. But you can see from some of my old content, if folks go back and look at stuff I posted in 2020, you'll be like, oh, that's kind of off. And it's because I was very much trying to hide a little bit of myself, I guess. And so, yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that bit of truth. Just for our listeners, code switching, it's a term it's an actual official term. It's something I learned in undergrad. I studied communications. This is the art of being able to speak the King's English, if you will, right? Being able to you go into the courtroom and talk one way, and in the in the hood or at home another way, and maybe even church, right? That's another sort of area of code switching. That's what we call that. It's an art that people of color in particular have had to master in order to be successful and navigate the very interesting world that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for sharing that. But let me you're on as our guest for lawyers. I mean, I could have you talk about so much, but I want to hone in a little bit about on your law journey, right? You are our second guest this season who seems to be thriving in the legal world and did not take the bar exam. And so, can you just talk to us about what you do as a lawyer, right? You're working in public policy, you're working in health and privacy. Tell us about this particular field of law so that so folks know what it is.
So it's all gonna, well, before I get into the field of law, to describe how I got to it, it's public health law, which is a very niche kind of field. And lately I've branched off very specifically into privacy law, dealing with HHS systems, public health systems, Department of Health and Human Services, that sort of thing. But how I fell into it is I thought I wanted to go to medical school, and I graduated from Christian Brothers University in 2013. I actually walked in graduation of May of 2012 and didn't graduate until May of 2013, because I wanted to take an entire semester of extra science courses because I wanted to, push toward the qualifications to go to medical school, because I kind of decided toward the end that I wanted to do that. So I took some biology, chemistry, all that. I think you need like 120 credit hours to graduate with a bachelor's. Ended up graduating like 132 or 133 or something. I've graduated with more credits than I've needed in every single one of my degrees, which speaks to how insane I am. But I walked in May of, and in between that, and going back, I had worked in a biochemistry lab in Brazil, through an NIH-funded grant, where I worked on, it was entomology, so I was working on insect biochemistry of cowpea weevils, and like they were infesting crops and stuff. And I'd also worked in like a mouse lab during neuroscience research and all that. So I was pretty certain I wanted to stay like very staunchly like STEM research science. And then I came back and I worked at Le Bonheur Children's Hospital for some months. I can't remember, maybe 6 months or so, working in a CABI lab, which is it's cardio data from pediatric patients. And I was working under the PI, the principal investigator, the doctor there, and talking about what I wanted to do. And I said, well, I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, pretty poor, on Medicaid, what we call TennCare in Tennessee, very sick, very chronically ill, in and out of the hospital, monthly. And I want to fight the injustices within our health system and within our public health system. And he said, don't be a doctor. You got to be a lawyer for that. And I was like, I don't want to sue people and I don't want to defend criminals, because that was pretty much all I knew about law school. And I pulled very much an Elle Woods. That doctor told me I should go to law school. And I said, okay. And then I sat for the LSAT and started law school. Like between deciding to go to law school and starting was like 6 months.
Wow. So
I was like, sure. So I went home and then I signed up for the LSAT exam, took it, and then I came into law school. So it was very much that like I said, from Legally Blonde, where she's just like, they said she woke up and said, I think I want to go to law school today. And that's kind of exactly what happened, because that doctor said that's what I should do. While at Memphis Law, I learned about public health law. They said, well, we've got a new dual degree program where you can get a master of public health at the same time. No one's ever done it. Want to do it? And I said, okay. So I became the first JD-MPH grad from the University of Memphis. And I did my externship at the CDC in Atlanta, Georgia, in the public health law program. And so circling all that around to say what public health law is it is the field of law that focuses on how public health is impacted and how the law specifically affects the prevention, mitigation, and occurrence of disease, injury, and illness. So, we're looking at things like fluoride regulations, right? Fluoride in the water to help people with their dental health. We're looking at things like car seat safety that help reduce the number of childhood injuries and fatalities when it comes to car accidents. We're looking at things like smoking laws, like changing the tobacco age from 18 to 21 to help reduce tobacco-related disease and injury, because tobacco is still the number one cause of non-communicable disease and illness in the world. So it's looking at the way that the law impacts health, and not just how you would treat it from a medical standpoint, because the law is very influential in our health and in our well-being. So that is
Absolutely.
the quick and dirty of it.
Well, that's so interesting because we in our last episode, one of our guests talked about the importance of policy, right?
Mhm.
You can vote, and we should vote. Absolutely, that's where it stops, but it doesn't end there, right? What
Right.
we've got to be able to do is be influential in policy. Um,
Yes.
and that's a little bit of what you're doing as well. Can you speak to what your day to day may look like in this field? So I mean, are you reading studies? Are you drafting laws? What does that look like as a lawyer?
Yeah, so I've flip-flopped between being a social scientist and a lawyer in my career because, I graduated as both. I can do both.
Yeah.
So when I was a regulatory counsel when I first came out of law school at the FDA. I worked in the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, and I worked on the review and approval of various parts of the applications of pharmaceutical companies to get certain drugs on the market. And it felt like drudgery and useless work until one day my team lead sent me an article and said, hey, that orphan drug exemption you approved, which orphan drug exemptions are for rare disease treatment. She said, look, and it was an article where the company announced that they were now able to move forward with potentially treating this rare disease because of, getting approved by the FDA. And she was like, you were a part of that. And it's kind of cool. But when you're working from the administrative agency side of things, you're not getting all the glory. You're just a bureaucrat kind of in the cog. And I kind of like that. I like that. I like being a piece to the solution. And I don't feel like I need all the attention. It's also, I've never really, though I did practice under the limited license as a clinic student in law school, and I did, handle several different cases. I actually don't, and it's funny saying that because of being a social media personality, but I'm actually not really into being the person in the courtroom with all eyes on me and the attention on me. I actually like working behind the scenes. And if nobody ever knows what I do, but the work gets done, that's all I care about. So
Yeah.
I did that. And I worked as a social scientist in the Center for Tobacco Products on evaluation and formative research for tobacco campaigns, those commercials that you see where they're telling, they'll be like inhaling on a vape and it say metals are going into your body. And you see like all the animations of the metals attacking their lungs and stuff, things like that to try to come up with effective anti-tobacco campaigns to help improve public health. And now, and in that time, I was learning privacy law kind of along the way when it comes to federal compliance systems. And so I now work as a privacy lawyer, within HHS and within FDA. And I just do a lot of review of IT systems, a lot of things to deal with the privacy of information. And it doesn't sound like the sexiest thing, but you have to keep in mind, we're talking about potentially clinical studies, participants in research, participants who are in these focus groups and surveys for the tobacco research done. We're talking about artificial intelligence. AI is a huge deal right now when it comes to misinformation and disinformation, especially when it comes to public health. So it doesn't sound exciting on the surface of it, but when you're breaking down what I do in my day-to-day with reviewing the compliance of these systems to make sure that privacy is protected, it's actually very important. So
Yeah.
and I
That
teach
is
food and drug law. I teach food and drug law to law students now. So that's really fun. It's kind of cool to help mold the next set of lawyers, so that's neat.
That is so amazing. You're doing so much, right? Like I wonder, how do you manage all of that, right? You've got a full time gig. You a comedian, so people have seen you perform at DC
Mhm.
Improv and Lincoln Theater and other places, and you're a very active content creator. You're being responsive to things that are happening on the fly, to court decisions. How do you juggle all that and still make it seem really kind of effortless?
I think that part of it is definitely, I've mentioned this before. Tavis Smiley, I interviewed with him and he asked me about compartmentalization. He said, you must be very good at it. I said, actually, yeah, that's a part of it. Being able to compartmentalize and kind of keep these pieces of my life separate and organized in my mind. Although a lot of times there can be crossover just because it happens naturally. But making sure to keep these things separate, especially if you work in the federal government, like I have to be very clear, like even in this interview now, it's not at all a representation or statement on behalf of the federal government. I'm speaking in my own individual capacity. So, making sure that I keep those things separate, comply with the Hatch Act, even in the political activism that I do, making sure that I'm not, for example, soliciting donations on behalf of a partisan candidate, because that is illegal even on my personal time, right? That is, I'm not allowed to do that, but I am allowed to, of course, exercise my First Amendment rights and talk about candidates I support. So just making sure to stay aware of like what I'm allowed to do, that helps kind of set those boundaries. A big chunk of it is, I don't know, my brain is weird. I have a neurodivergent brain and I read things really fast. I take in info really fast and I spit it out really fast. And so that just helps. A lot of people ask about videos, and I will drop my kid off at school and I will take, 10 minutes to sit in my car and make a video. Like people say when I record the videos that I have in my car, it's because I probably was dropping my kid off at school, because when I'm with my kid, I'm with my kid. So I'm either making these videos after he's gone to bed. That's why the video I posted debunking the 17% of the population committing 51% of the crimes statistic that racists love to espouse, I made that at like midnight last night after my kid had been asleep, and all that. So doing things in off hours, a lot of times just taking time in the green room at a comedy show, because I'm like, I'm not going to be on for the next 30, 40 minutes. So I don't know, I have time to do a little research and make a video real quick, and just kind of using my time that way. But being a mom, a wife, a lawyer, doing all these things, I do want to acknowledge that a big part of it is privilege. I will never not acknowledge that. I get to work from home 100%. My husband works from home 100%. We are, in a good financial position. We live in a great area with amazing infrastructure and resources and public transportation and things like the public preschool that my son goes to, child care, all of those things that are accessible to us. And so I always like to state that, because I feel like, especially in the motherhood and the parenting space, there's always this image of like the mom who has it all, and people go, oh my God, why am I not doing all these things that she's doing? Privilege and money. I mean, just straight up, privilege and money completely change your ability to be able to do things. And I grew up very poor. Very sick and very poor in Memphis, which, as you know, is unfortunately one of the poorest cities in the country. And I think it's like 30% of adults in Memphis are still living below the poverty line. Like you grow up in that, and now I'm living in one of the wealthiest counties in the DC suburbs, and it's like a whole big, I don't know, it's like such a shift, and there's just like whiplash from it compared to how I grew up and how I live now. And people who say money can't buy happiness, yeah, it maybe not, but I'm sorry, it solves a lot of problems.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm a magical, amazing unicorn. No, part of it straight up is money. I do have some disabilities, but for the most part, I'm in good health. There's privilege to it. That really makes a lot of things possible. And I wonder how many people could be doing what I do, or even more than what I do, but simply can't because of social barriers,
provided with the same resources, right? Like
right.
if they had the same opportunities. I often say, I think that money doesn't buy happiness. It is true, but money it buys a little bit of happiness, and it can buy a lot of bit of joy too. So and when you're in a joyous space, that changes things. So
yeah.
So I think without context, that particular saying it's not 100% accurate. But without the context, I think it is true though. Long term happiness, money doesn't buy that.
Which is also why I'm on the non-traditional legal path I'm on, because there isn't in between. I could probably make triple my salary working at a firm if I decide to go sit for the bar and get licensed and go work for a firm. And I just kind of decided early on that wasn't worth it. Like those golden handcuffs, as in the legal field, we often refer to it as, not worth it to me. I feel like I live pretty comfortably. I'm not going to be making the huge big bucks or flying in private jets or anything like that, but I'm living pretty okay. And the work-life balance, it's so much more important to me than increasing my income by that. It's just not worth it. It's just not worth it to me.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that. I am running out of time. I've got like two other questions that I usually ask, and I am trying to figure out which one I actually want to ask you. I'm just going to go for both of them, right? We'll see how it turns out. And you answer whichever one you want. So the first one is, or both if you feel like it. The first one is, what's your best or worst experience in the field, right? Best meaning your highlight, worst meaning your most teachable moment. And then the other one is, what advice or counsel would you give to your younger self or to another young lawyer who may be thinking about following your footsteps? So I don't know if you can get both of those in, but I'd certainly love to get your pick your brain about those two items.
Worst moment was when a white female judge patted my head to touch my hair.
Oh, wow.
That's still a problem in the legal field. Just gonna put that out there, and I'm not gonna really elaborate because I think Black women know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's the worst. Best moment was when I was named a 2017 Presidential Management Fellow. I was really honored. I'm the first person from the University of Memphis to be named a Presidential Management Fellow, and that was
That's
really,
huge.
really great. And that's what got me here into DC, so that was great. Advice for other lawyers who are coming up. For the love of God, please keep access to mental health services. Don't get too bogged down and don't think you have to do every single thing the traditional way. Sometimes you can just make your own path. I kind of just, went through law school and sometimes I made a C because I was like, you know what, crim law, I don't really care about that. I'll pull a C in there and be fine. And then I Cali'd my health law seminar, because I was working in health law. That was important to me. And I'm not saying like don't shoot for the best grades, but also you can be successful and graduate law school without having to be the top student, the straight A student, or doing the summer associate position or whatever. There's a million ways to be successful. And the only way you're not going to be successful is if you completely destroy your mental well-being and your spirit so that you can no longer work at your full capacity. And so I would very easily made decisions about, you know what, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take the lower grade in this class because I don't have the time or energy to focus on this. It's very grueling. Law school is unfortunately a hazing experience for the most part. It's still not great. And I encourage folks to, of course, put their mental health first because it's just not worth it in the long run with the rate of suicide and depression that we see in our profession. It's not worth it. Just take a breath.
Well said. I mean, I'm just going to leave it right there. Thank you so much, Elizabeth Booker Houston, Booker Squared on all the social medias. Congrats on your new podcast and all the wonderful things that you're doing. I am such a big fan of you and your work. I am rooting for you. And, you keep giving these people hell for us. We appreciate you standing in the gap for us. Okay. I look forward to hearing more from you on your podcast, Devil's Opposing Counsel. Did I get it right? All right,
you got
good.
it. On Spotify, YouTube, and also on my website.
All right, very good. And give us your website just one more time for the people who want to find you.
You can get there from 3 different addresses, bookersquared.com, elizabethbookerhouston.com, or thedevilsopposingcounsel.com. They will all take you to the same website.
Excellent. Thanks again for your time. Best wishes to you, and we will be in touch.
Thank you so much.
All right, friends, we'll be right back. All right, friends, we're back. It's time now for our wellness check. Today, I want to talk a little bit about grief. I'm not going to talk long today because I think so much has been said, but I want to make space for it here. Grief is a nasty thing. It's harmful. It's dark. It's scary. It's a real challenge. Regina King was on the Jimmy Kimmel show recently. She lost her son to suicide about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago. I think it was January of 2022. And she defined it best, I think, the best I've heard it. And she said, grief is love that has no place to go. And so I want to just remind us, myself included, that when we're dealing with grief, I want us to resist the urge to stay inward with our grief, to recluse, to recoil with our grief. That's something I'm guilty of. When I feel grief, I feel heavy, I tend to reclude and go into a cave. But what I've been practicing recently is instead of going inward with my grief or inward with the feelings of sadness or loneliness or going inward with those things, I've been actively working on going outward. And so when I feel like I'm missing that loved one, James A. Brown, Jimmy, and so many others, my friends, some friends whom I've lost, loved ones, family members, when I'm feeling like I'm missing them or feeling those feelings of grief coming on, I actively work to reach out. Instead of going to self, and going into a closet or whatever the case may be, I outreach to my friends. I outreach to family. I check on people. I talk to people who I haven't spoken to in a while. Those sorts of things really do help. And so I want to encourage you and us while we're grieving, while we're looking for a place to put that love that has no place to go, give that love or portions of that love to some of the friends and loved ones who are still here, who care about you, and who want to see you do well. Um, I'll just say, if there's no one else that you can go to, remember you can always go to the Lord in prayer, but you can also email us at lawyerish at apexgroupdc.com. You can email us too. If you need to go outward, come to us. They'll make sure I get that email. I will check them and I will be responsive to you. But I think so will so many others. So remember that you're not alone in this thing. And I don't know that grief ever goes away, but I can tell you eventually it does get better. That's your wellness check for this week. Remember to live life in peace and not pieces. We'll be right back with our Apex highlight. All right, friends, we are back, and it's now time for our Apex highlight. I'm so incredibly excited to welcome our guest, Mr. Charlie W. Moore, the Honorable Charlie W. Moore. This great man in Black history is a living legacy. He graduated high school in 1938 at the age of 14. He earned his Bachelor's of Arts from Morris Brown College in 1950 with magna cum laude honors. He then enrolled in an MBA program at the NYU Graduate School of Business, where he earned an MBA. And even before completing that program, he was offered and accepted the role of Chief Financial Officer at Morris Brown College, a position he held for over 15 years. He also worked at the U.S. Department of Health Education and Welfare Services, where he provided support to HBCUs. As acting president for Morris Brown College at least twice. He is a finance guy and former business owner. He was the international treasurer for Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. He's the oldest living member of Phi Beta Sigma. Again, a walking legacy. And he's also particularly for our purposes today, he is the namesake of the Charlie W. Moore Endowment at Morris Brown. He's going to talk to us a little bit about that today. Brother Moore, thank you so much. Welcome to Lawyers.
Thank you for having me.
Yes,
Can
sir.
you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. I can hear
Okay.
you just fine. Thank you for doing the show and for being willing to talk with us today. You are 100 years old. I'm going to take some time to talk with you today, and you've got the floor. I want you to share what you have for us. As I mentioned, you are walking history. I'd like to know, you've been alive for 100 years. What would you say is the key to living a prosperous and long life?
Well, I don't think I could point to any one thing that contributed to my longevity. Mostly I just took one day at a time and tried to make the best out of each day. So that eventually added up to 100 years. And of course, as I said, my birthday address that I'm now working on the second 100 years. And hopefully, I would be able to do the second 100, but I don't think that's in sight. but I did a great job in getting to the first 100. That was not my objective, not my goal, and not strive for it, but I just took one day at a time, made the best out of it, and you know, it just ended up being 100 years. Now I'm going into the second, and I'll do the best I can there as well.
Still taking it one day at a time, I imagine.
Yeah.
What would you say? I like this question. What would you say is the most sage advice that you were given growing up or living life, right? And that you would like to pass on to the next generation. So what's the most sage advice you've gotten that you want to make sure other people get?
Well, if I think quickly, it's just trying to make the best out of each day. Each day of life, there's something there that you need to take a note of in order to get on to the next step. I don't know whether you have been told this, but I started my formal education in elementary school, going to school with my brother. And although he was 18 months older than I am, or than I was, I was able to catch up with him in studies. And we ended up studying together on weekends and every opportunity to learn. We took advantage of, and we had a lot of information from our parents. I must give my parents credit for moving us in the right direction to get where I am now. And if it were not for them, I doubt that I would have been able to make it as far as I did. And I was grateful to them for their ambition and seeing myself and my brother going through high school, which was a great challenge during those days. And I was able to complete that and go on to other things. Some things that I did not realize were out there. And of course, we'll get to the military service, but that was a turning point in my life that allowed me to experience certain things that I would not have experienced had there not been a World War II. I didn't realize it at the time. And of course, as a result of that, I was drafted as a soldier in the Army for World War II. And the experiences that I obtained from that helped me tremendously and propelled me to the position where I am today, and to do things that I never thought that I was able to accomplish, but I did. And that's basically the thing that propelled me to where I am now, and the things I was able to accomplish at Morristown College with the U.S. Department of Health Education and Welfare, and also the progress I made in the military. Putting all of those things together was responsible for the success that I was able to achieve. So that's what it was, and that's here I am.
I think so. First of all, the takeaway for me, there's so much. The takeaway being that there is something for us to learn in each day, and we're taking it one day at a time. There's something to be learned from each day. But you jumped on my next question, which is great because you're right on point as per usual. I want to talk about your military experience. You're a World War II veteran. I'd like to know, and obviously the world has changed so much since then, but I would like to know what was your biggest takeaway from your time in the military? What do you and like so? I guess what was your biggest takeaway, and what do you remember most? What's your strongest memory from your time in the military?
Well, one of the things that I think I took away, I didn't realize it then, but doing basic training in the Army at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, there was a officers candidate school in the area, and the candidates for military officers would occasionally visit our campus. We were just ordinary soldiers, but I was impressed with the fact that there were these black young men offering themselves as a candidate for officers in all departments of infantry, which I learned later was really a, a position that nobody really would seek. But those young men present themselves in their uniforms and in their battalions, and it just made me want to be like them. I say, well, if they can go to officers candidate school as they did, I should be able to do the same thing. But it didn't happen right away. I just kept that in the background, saying that that's an objective that I would want to achieve as I move through this military service. The trip overseas from the United States to overseas was an experience that I will never forget. We left the port of embarkation in New York City, Camp Shanks, and sailed on the sea for 30 days. Ending up from New York in 30 days, we ended up in Brisbane, Australia. And there we were given assignments to work with the U.S. Army, military, Air Force, with an assignment to build runways for the Air Force to supply the infantry soldiers in obtaining the promise that General Douglas MacArthur promised the United States citizens, that although he was run out of the army through Manila, he promised
Uh,
that he would return, and he did everything he could
Brother
using
Moore,
us. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
I think we're having a slight connection issue. I want to just pause you for a second so our guests can make sure that we get this part. Can you hear me? Okay.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to let you keep going. I want you to finish your story. I think the last thing that I heard you say is that you arrived at Brisbane, Australia, and you were tasked with building runways. Is that right?
Right. That is correct.
Okay.
So that,
Pick
yeah.
up
So
from there.
in
Go
the,
right ahead.
yeah, okay. So my daily assignment was involved in building those runways for supply planes to bring supplies into the infantry to continue to move forward and make its way back to Manila in the Philippines, as MacArthur had promised the American people. The Japanese ran him out of Manila. He said, I'm going to Australia, but I will return. And he used us recruits to fulfill that promise. And I was a part of that. So that was something that I guess stuck with me from that point on until the war was over. One of the things that happened during that recruitment was when I was drafted into the military. We ended up being joined with another group of draftees that were recruited from the northeast part of the United States. And unfortunately for me, that group went ahead of me, and it was a part of an organization of the U.S. Army that allowed them to receive choice positions in that outfit in the U.S. Army, 857th Aviation Engineer Battalion. And we went about those duties with, with, well, with the same determination that Joe MacArthur had proclaimed, that we are going to return back to Manila and defeat the Japanese. So every day we did everything we could to carry out our assignment. I kept in mind the fact that those officers candidate with officers training candidates were successful in obtaining their position as officers. Mostly started out with second lieutenants, as most officers do, unless they went to West Point. But that was successful, and we did it well until the war was over, when President Truman dropped the atomic bomb and ended the war. That was a gracious thing for me and for all those that were with me. Instead of going to Japan to continue the Pacific War, we turned around and headed back to the United States, headed back home with a head full of knowledge and the offer from the Army to receive military training, which we called the GIBO. And that was one of the incentives that encouraged me not to stay in the Army, but to go and get more training and take advantage of what I had learned as a draftee during the war. And it paid off for me, and it's continuing to pay off.
Yes, that's amazing because I mean that GI Bill is what helped you attend Morris Brown College, isn't that right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's where you got your formal education, and you started in finance. You also met your wife at Morris Brown College, isn't that right?
That's true. Yes.
Can you tell us about her a little bit about your marriage? You guys were married for something like 80 years, if I'm not mistaken. What can you tell us just a little bit about what that's like and about her?
Well, as best as I can explain, the marriage was, I would say, very successful. I did meet her at Morris Brown College. She was just out of high school. And of course, I was there as the result of the GI Bill, and applied to several HBCUs for admission because I wanted to utilize that benefit. And most of them said, well, we don't have space for any more. Most of the GIs were seeking training under the GI Bill. Many of them did not want to go back into formal training, but some of us did, including myself. So I applied, including Morris Brown, and they all said that we are full Well, full of GIs, all the GIs want to come from college. And Morris Brown said, but we do have room for one more. So you come on and we'll accept you as a student, a college student, enrolled in Morris Brown. And I did. And I did very well. I was enrolled with students who had just finished high school, and we were tested as to our qualifications to do college work. And I did very well. I did better, as a matter of fact, than some of the enrollees who had just finished high school. And I did not take remedial courses, and I went on into a normal entry level as a freshman at Morris Brown College. I was a little concerned about, you see, I was out of formal training for a few years. And I had some concern as to whether I could adjust to a formal day-to-day college training after having been out of college for so many years. But to my surprise, I was able to do my studies and get my grades and make good grades. I think I heard you mention earlier that I've eventually graduated cum laude in 1950 from Morris Brown College. The professor of business encouraged me to take the 4-year degree course rather than the diploma course, which I started was a 2-year course, in order for me to convince myself that I was ready and could do college work. And of course, I did. After I finished the first year and the 2-year training and transferred on to the 4-year degree program, which I did well and completed the course with honors. And of course, that stimulated me to want to go even further. I had a little more time on my GI Bill, so I applied for entry to the Graduate School of Business Administration at New York University, and that went well as well. I was also able to find employment as well as do the formal training that led to the MBA degree. So that all worked out very well for me. I moved to New York for a while to facilitate my training toward the Master of Business Administration. I had married, my family stayed in Atlanta, and when I did graduate, well, as a matter of fact, before I graduated, as you mentioned earlier, the officials from Morris Brown offered me a position, which I eventually accepted, and I was able to go back to NYU and complete my Master of Business Administration degree before I did graduate. And I was offered this position, which I took, and worked on a temporary business until I was able to return to New York and complete my studies for the MBA. And I went on and stayed there for 15 years, which was much longer than I had anticipated. But when you like what you're doing and you can see the positive results of your efforts, time goes so fast. Those 15 years went by so fast until before I realized it, I had served 15 years, but I told myself one day that out of 15 years, I think it's long enough for me to stay in this one place. So I'm going to look for other opportunities. And that's when I applied for graduate work and was accepted and completed the utilization of the rest of my GI at NYU. And my MBA was awarded me in absentia while I was serving as a chief financial officer at Morristown College. So that's kind of the way it went.
I thank you for sharing that. I'm running a little bit out of time, but I want to make sure that we get to this. You have started the Charlie Moore Endowment Fund at Morris Brown. Can you just tell us a little bit about that and why you wanted to start this endowment to support Morris Brown?
Well, I guess in the short, I wanted to I wanted to leave something at Morris Brown that I would be remembered for. And the thing that impressed me most was I should leave a fund to help other students who also wanted to achieve in business administration or in other areas. And so they'll remember why I was there and that I did leave something that good for them to utilize in terms of achievement. And that was in my mind, and that's what I did after I had graduated from Morris Brown. And it came in, it came in pretty good because the students that were enrolling at Morris Brown, most of them like funds. And I encouraged them to apply for assistance through the Charles Moore Financial Assistance Program, Scholarship Program, which, as a matter of fact, the fund is still there, still active, although the fund did diminish somewhat when the school got into financial trouble, but it's still there. It's still on the record, and funds are still in the treasury at Morris Brown, and it's going to be resurrected and reactivated now that the school has regained its accreditation. It will be utilized to the full extent for those new students that are coming in but need financial assistance. So that's kind of just short of why I wanted to do that, and I did.
And you definitely did. And I want to take a moment to encourage our listeners to donate to that fund. It's the Charlie Moore Endowment, Charles W. Moore Endowment at Morris Brown. You can find out more information on our website. Also, I want to just point out, Brother Moore, that in October of this year, I'm celebrating my 40th birthday, and one of the things that we're doing, or the major thing that we're doing, is this 70s themed players ball that is going to benefit nonprofit organizations. And one of those nonprofits that we're going to benefit, that we're going to give to, is the Charles W. Moore Endowment at Morris Brown. And we're happy to name your endowment as one of the beneficiaries.
Well, thank you. One of the things we know we're running out of time, but my employment with the U.S. Department of Education was in a position where I could be of assistance to HBCUs, including my alma mater, Morris Brown. I was able to provide some federal funding through my program at Morris Brown College. And as a result, My name is posted on most of the new buildings that were constructed after I became the fiscal officer at Morris Brown College. And until the school lost its accreditation initially, my name was posted on each new building that was constructed during my tenure at Morris Brown. And I felt pretty good over that, so that relatives and others who knew me could realize that there was a saying in the Army that whenever we moved from one location to the other, there would be a sign posted that Kilroy was here. And I wanted that sign to read at Morristown that Morris Charlie Moore was here. And here's his scholarship program to prove it. And you are eligible to apply for it to continue your education if you want to have a lack of funds and can utilize those funds that are available to help you continue on through Morris Brown and into other graduate programs if you so desire.
That's certainly laudable, and we appreciate your service there. You've been committed to service just about all your life. I mean, I could go on to talk about your service to Phi Beta Sigma and to the community in general, but I want to stick with the finance with one of my last questions that I have for you. You've got this finance background. I want to know what your financial advice would be to the younger generation, to the Black diaspora in general. What financial counsel would you give us as a people?
Well, in short, what I think is that you need to take advantage of all your financial resources. I don't know. I don't know what else I could say. You gotta take advantage of what financial resources you have access to, and as you study the advantages of owning your funds and setting them up and allow them to be used for others, it will mean a lot to you in the long run. And I think that message was spread throughout the HBCU community. And as a result, that fund was created. It is still there, and it will continue to provide resources for those who need money and are not able to obtain it from other sources. So I say go for it and utilize it to the best advantage.
All right, that's great. All right, one last question, and you take as much time as you like here on this one. I want to know if you had an opportunity to go back and do anything different, would you, and what would that be?
I think I'll blaze a perfect trail. If I had to go back, I wouldn't change a thing.
All right. Well, I thank you for sharing that, and thank you for your service, Brother Moore. I thank you for spending time with us today and entrusting me and our lawyerish team here, entrusting us with your story and with a small piece of your legacy. Thank you for making the time and for all that you've done for our community and all that you're continuing to do.
You're quite welcome, and I'll continue to do the best I can, although I'm now working on that second 100.
Yes, sir. All right. Thank you so much. You be blessed, and I can't wait to chat with you again, and we'll be in touch shortly. All right, friends, hold what you got. We'll be right back with your motivational moment. All right, friends. Boy, we are back. That was a lot for me. I'm so grateful for Brother Moore. We are back, though, and it is now time for our motivational moment. This one is for all of our heartbroken people out there. I want you to know that you have not met the last person who will love you. You haven't met that person yet. Sure, that last person did you wrong. That low down, no good, fill in the blanks as you see fit, broke your heart and left you in shambles. I want you to know, as Brother Moore is our example, there's a lot of life ahead, and you have not met the last person who will love you. And so if that's what you're looking for, if you're in shambles today, just know that tomorrow is a brand new day. We're taking it one day at a time. And there are billions of people on this earth. You have not met the person who will love you next or who will love you best. All right? That's your motivational moment. We'll be right back to wrap things up. Well, friends, we've done it again. Another great episode, probably one of my favorites. I want to thank Elizabeth Booker Houston for spending time with us today. That's Booker Squared on all the social medias. A big shout out to my brother, our living legacy, Charlie W. Moore. What an honor it was to talk with him and to for him to share his wisdom with us. Remember, Lawyerish is brought to you by Apex, where aptitude meets excellence. And we're powered by the Green Law Firm, your one-stop shop for everything real estate in Tennessee and Mississippi. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Like any voyage, it's always just a little bit more fun if you invite a friend or two along. What else we got? Email your questions and your feedback to lawyerish@apexgroupdc.com. Thanks to all of our friends who listen, who watch, and who give us feedback. I appreciate that, y'all. Keep it coming. Thank you so much for allowing me to be in this space and to share it with each and every one of you. Until next time, friends, be well.